All right. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi brachas. We are starting Perek Ches, Halacha Aleph in the Ois V'Hadar edition. We're going to be learning Daf Ayin Ches. We'll be starting on Daf Ayin Zayin Amid Beis by the Mishnah. The Mishnah begins, the Perek begins by pointing out Elu Devarim Shebein Beishamai Ubeis Hillel B'Seuda. In other words, regarding Hilchoi Seuda, there are various areas in which there was a machlokes between Beishamai and Beis Hillel, beginning in our Mishnah with the one machlokes of when you make Kiddush Friday night over a cup of wine, and when you make Kiddush Yontiv over a cup of wine, and we have to drink the wine. In other words, we'll have to say the Birchas Hanehenen over the wine. The question is, what comes first? Beis Shammai holds, first you say the bracha of Mekadesh HaShabbos, first you say the bracha of Mekadesh Yisrael V'Hazmanim, and after you finish the Kiddush, you make the bracha on the Boire Pri Hagafen, and then you drink it. Not the way we do it. Beis Hillel, we pass on like Beis Hillel, says first Yayin, and then Kiddush. Now the Gemara will begin by quoting a Braisa that will give us two reasons behind the Shita of Beis Shammai, two reasons behind the Shita of Beis Hillel. Actually, we'll see that the Amoraim had a question, which of the two are the main reason? And based on that argument, whether the first or the second by Beis Shammai or the first and second of Beis Hillel, there's going to be a nafkamina. And what will be the halacha when it comes to Havdalah and Yayin? We also make Havdalah over wine. Here again, we make the Yayin. I'm not even talking about later, the Psamim and the Neir. We'll learn about this in later Mishnayos and in this chapter. But Yayin, Havdalah or Yayin. So what will be the shitas of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel regarding Yayin and Havdalah will depend on what is the main reason behind the machlokes in our Mishnah. We will then go on to learn what happens if B'chlal there's no wine available. And at the end, we can at least open up the following topic. There's going to be a Mishnah in this Perek that's going to tell us another machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And that's regarding Birchas Hamazon. Now, when we make Birchas Hamazon nowadays, how does it work? We make it Al Hayayin. We do Birchas Hamazon. And then after we finish benching, we make the Boire Pri Hagafen. Beis Shammai goes the other way around. Beis Shammai holds first you make the bracha over wine. And by the way, if I had wine during the meal, I don't have to make another bracha prior to benching. We're speaking about someone who had no wine during the Su'udah. They make the bracha Boire Pri Hagafen prior to benching, and then they bench. So holds Beis Shammai. We're going to repeat all of that. The Gemara is going to point out that there's going to be a scenario where the Beis Shammai of our Mishnah and the Beis Shammai that we just quoted, Shammai in our Mishnah says by Kiddush, first Kiddush, then Yayin. By Birchas Hamazon, Beis Shammai holds first Yayin, then Birchas Hamazon. Then they would drink. What's going to happen if a person only has one cup of wine, and they're having a meal, Erev Shabbos going into Shabbos? Normally the rule is if you are in the middle of the meal, you don't have to bench. Normally the rule is Poiris, Mape, Umekadesh. We'll speak it out again. You make Kiddush in the middle of a meal. But if you only have one cup of wine, and since it's a mitzvah to use wine during Birchas Hamazon, the halacha is you finish your meal. And you're going to do Kiddush and Birchas Hamazon over wine over the same cup. Question then will be, what will be the Seder? And as we'll speak out when we learn the Gemara, trying to put together the sheet of Beis Shammai in our Mishnah. Kiddush, then Yayin. And the other din by Birchas Hamazon that Beis Shammai holds Yayin and then Birchas Hamazon. In the case that I just mentioned, there's going to be a contradiction. We're going to get trapped. We won't know what to do. L'shita is Beis Shammai. And if we'll have time, the Gemara is going to point out that we'll have the similar question. Beis Hillel, same scenario by Havdalah. There also, if a person is having a meal, and there's a mitzvah to bench over Yayin, but you have to make Havdalah over Yayin. So you finish eating the meal. Whenever you finish eating the meal, then you're going to do on the same cup of wine, both Birchas Hamazon and Havdalah. And Beis Hillel will have the same type of dilemma that it won't work, as we'll speak out. Let's start on Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Beis, opening up the new chapter. Says the Mishnah, Elu Devarim Shebein Beis Shammai U Beis Hillel. These are the matters of a machlokes. These meaning B'lashon Abim throughout this Perek. This Mishnah will only have one. But what arguments are we quoting in this chapter is B'Seuda, as it says in the Charedim, B'Hilchai Seuda. And here goes the first one. Beishamai yoimrim kiddush. We know we have to make kiddush because it says in the Aseres Adibros, Zocher es yoim haShabbos lekatche. We're going to go that the type of kiddush that the Torah is talking about is to be mekadosh it b'dibur, to say words of kiddush. Midrabanan, let's go with that shita as we learned in Bavli Psachim. Midrabanan zoichreu al hayayin. So yes, that's why ultimately we'll be holding a cup of wine and we'll be saying kiddush. We're not focusing yet at all on the Yom Hashishi, by Chulu Hashemayim, or others, Vayihera Vayiboiket. Let's put that aside. Kiddush would be the bracha which ends with the words Mekadesh HaShabbos. Now that midrabanan, we have to make it over a cup of wine and then drink it. You have to make a boire pri agafen. Which one comes first? Beis Shammai says, first you make mevarech al hayoim. So whether it's Shabbos, the bracha that concludes with the words Mekadesh HaShabbos, if it's Yontiv, the part of the Kiddush that concludes with the words Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim, and only then do you make the bracha over the wine, and then you drink. However, no, mevarech al hayayin. First the bracha goes over the wine, and only then v'acharkach mevarech al hayoim. So you make the Mekadesh HaShabbos, and then you drink it. Obviously holding that it's not a hefsek between the birchas hanahen and over the wine and the drinking of it, because you're having wine als kiddush. Okay, so is the machlekes. Why does each one say what they say? Gemara is asking my tamayon the Beis Shammai, and what we actually have now is a brayso. And in the brayso, like we mentioned in the introduction, we're going to learn pshat in the brayso that there are two separate reasons Beis Shammai and two separate reasons Beis Hillel. Reason number one, Beis Shammai, shekedushas hayoim garma liyayin sheyavoy. God, get used to these words. The kedusha of the day is that which causes the wine to come. In other words, let's go with the words of cause and effect. Right? What's cause and effect? Why are you having wine? Why are we having wine? Because of Shabbos. You can have wine whenever you want, but why are you having wine at Kiddush? What's mechayev making Kiddush? The Kiddush of Shabbos. Since it's Shabbos, for Shabbos in the beginning, you have to be mekadosh it b'dvanim over a cup of wine. Cause and effect. The cause comes before the effect. The reason why I'm doing Kiddush is because it's Shabbos. So mention Shabbos before you have the wine. Number two, that's the way we'll learn, not only the cause and effect concept, but we're speaking about the time. In Zman, what comes first? In Bizman. That's very important. At what point are you chai? Did it become Shabbos? It comes Shabbos before Bizman, on your clock, before you're making Kiddush. Right? There's Lichbenchen, you add to that the 18 minutes, perhaps another minute or two, right, for Toys for Shabbos. Whenever that is, then you entered Bein Hashmashas, then you entered the Laila Vadai, etc. You don't make Kiddush then. You make Kiddush probably a half an hour later. You make Kiddush on your clock after first Shabbos came, and now you're having a meal. Very good. So it's the concept. It's the concept of cause and effect. Even if theoretically you would be making Kiddush exactly when Shabbos comes in, Beis Shammai still holds that Kedushas Hayoim. Why are you beginning the meal with wine? Dafke, because it's Shabbos. So Shabbos is the cause, wine is the effect. Or because Bisman, it already was Shabbos prior to you holding the cup of wine in your hand. So mention Shabbos and then the bracha over the wine. What's amazing now, again, that's the way we're going to be learning Pshat, is now the Braisa continues, my Tamayon, the Beis Hillel, also has to be two reasons. And the two reasons have to counter the two reasons of Beis Shammai. Let's go into the first reason of cause and effect. Let's go into cause and effect. Says Beis Hillel the opposite. Shahayayin goyim lekedushas hayoim shatei omar. Wow. In other words, now here, what does it mean that wine enables you to make the Kiddush? Without the wine, you can't make Kiddush. Big machlokes that we have in the Bavli. We're going to read all of it in the Charedim. Look inside the Charedim, 5 lines before the bottom of the Amid. Shayayin goyim lekiddish ledas habavli lefi roiv hamefarshim. The Savar most holds that if you don't have wine, you can make kiddush over bread. You can use pas for kiddush as we have in the Siddur. Ule Rabbi Yudan the Yerushalmi de El Shleiferik Shleisha Shachlu the Savar Nami Kain, as we just spoke out. Perush Rashi and the Meiri. Based on that, they will explain these words of Beis Hillel Shahayayin Goyim Sheim Ein Yayin Ein Mekachim. Without wine, you can't make kiddush. Hold on. If you can make kiddush using bread, so what do you mean that Beis Hillel is saying without wine you can't make kiddush? No, the logic is since without wine you can't make kiddush, so you got to first make the bracha over the wine and then make Kaddish on Shabbos, because that's also cause and effect. You can make it on bread. No, says quotes the Charedim from Rashi. Kaddish al pas who gamu b'makim yayin. Look at bread as a b'di'evedika wine for kiddush. You need wine to make kiddush. Included in that statement is bread is b'di'eved like wine, and a chanami. Whether you're making kiddush the way you should over wine, or if you don't have wine but you do have bread, then you'll substitute the wine for bread if you're going to follow that. You could. That's also like the wine. And there also look inside your siddur. Look inside the siddur Tilas Hashem. You'll see that on one side it says Boire Pri Agafen, on the other side it says Amoitz Lechem Ha'aretz before Mekadesh HaShabbos, because without saying kiddush over wine and in extension, if needed, over bread, you can't make kiddush. Cause and effect. However, and according to the Rabbeinu Tam, just concluding the Charedim, and Gam Ladas Abavli, that there isn't even an option ever, even with the ever of being Mekadosh Ala Pas, even better. And according to them, what were to happen if a person doesn't have wine? They don't make kiddush. It says in the 10 Commandments you have to make kiddush, like we spoke on in our intro. We're going to go with the opinions that there's Zachac Esyem HaShabbos Zachreu Bidvarim is the Deoraisa. Midrabanan Zachreu Alayayin. If you don't have a Derabanan, you have to do the Deoraisa. And therefore, if you only have wine as an option, if that's the halachic only option, and you don't have wine, what do? You don't say kiddush. You have to say kiddush. You said it in the daven. That's a side note. The point is that there's cause and effect. You have to have wine, in parentheses, according to the Rashi and the Meiri. Bread is like b'makam yayin in order to make kiddush. If not, you'll rely on what you did in the daven. So that should be the one coming first. Now we're going to go to Daf Ayin Chesam Adal. Now, like we mentioned, Beis Shammai gave 2 reasons. Either it's a cause and effect. What's the cause? What's the effect? Or like he said, Beis Shammai says, Bisman, the Kedusha of Shabbos begins before you're holding the cup of wine. It came first. To counter that, Beis Hillel says, let me tell you another rule. And my rule trumps your rule, which is Hayayin Tadir. Hayayin Tadir means not that you're chayiv to have wine. You're not chayiv to have wine unless it's Taka Kiddush and Abdallah, Berachas Hamazon. But wine is consumed a lot more Tadir, a lot more frequent than Shabbos. People have wine during the week. And therefore, the Kedusha of Shabbos and Yom Tov is Eino Tadir. And the rule of Tadir v'she'eino Tadir Koydem is so powerful that counters your thing that Shabbos came before you're holding the cup of wine. Gavaldik. Now let's go even more Gavaldik. When you have here in that Braisa 2 reasons l'Beis Shammai, 2 reasons l'Beis Hillel, we're going to go with the premise that one was the main reason. The other one was a secondary and not equal. And that main reason, if there's going to be a scenario where that reason doesn't stand, Beis Shammai would change his mind. Question is, which one is the main l'Beis Shammai? Which one is the main l'Beis Hillel? And there's a machlokes ha'amoraim with an afkamina in halach. So Amar Rabbi Yosi, let's go now and apply the machlokes in our Mishnah. What do you do by Havdalah? Yayin v'Havdalah. Then, Midivnei Shneim, Rabbi Yosi says that when it comes to Havdalah, both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and this is, as we'll see in a moment, Rabbi Yosi is of the understanding that the Beis Shammai's first reason is the main reason, and Beis Hillel's second reason is the main reason. Remember those words. If that's the premise of Rabbi Yossi, and therefore he says that both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel will hold Yain v'Havdalah, Hayayin Kodim, which is, by the way, the way we do it. Again, let's shelve for a moment the Psamim and the Neder. We'll have a mission about it. Let's just focus on Yain and Havdalah. Again, we make Yain by the Priyagofen before Havdalah. Don't even think about Hine Keli Shawasi. Like we are also shelving Yom Hashishi. We're just looking at the bracha of Havdalah, which is the bracha that ends with the words Hamavdal and Kodesh L'Choil, and the bracha over the Yayin. Everyone will hold Yayin Kodim. Why? So let's go. Based on the premise that the first reason in Beis Shammai is the main reason. Klum tam in the Beis Shammai elo mamash. It's like the ikir. That's the reason. Shekadushas hayim garmel yayin sheyavai. In cause and effect. Cause and effect. That why are you having wine before the meal? Why are you doing it? You never have wine before the meal. That's not true. We learned before that you had wine as an appetizer. But why are you chayiv to have wine right now? Because it's Shabbos. Shabbos is causing the wine. Vekan, when it goes to the end of Shabbos, this is mamash gaval. In other words, when you're making Havdalah, Shabbos is ushering in, a Kiddush is ushering Shabbos. What is Havdalah? Well, you can say that Havdalah is ushering the week, but the way it's ushering the week, it's not because it's facing the week. It's looking back to the Shabbos, and it's honoring the Shabbos that passed by drinking wine. So actually, let's go again, by Shabbos. Shabbos comes in. Shabbos is the reason why you have to drink wine. So you say Shabbos and then wine. Shabbos is the reason for the wine. The week is not the reason for the wine and Havdalah. You're being machabed the exit of Shabbos with wine. So you're drinking the wine not for something that's ahead of you, for something that's behind you. It flips the order. First you make the yayin, you're saying goodbye to Shabbos, and then you're greeting in the week. So even the Shammai will be moida cause and effect. This type of cause and effect. First yayin and then Havdalah. Now let's go to Beis Hillel, and this is also important. Rabbi Yossi understands the second reason of Beis Hillel to be the primary reason, which is Klum tamen the Mishamai elo the Beis Hillel elo shayayin toder ukudusha ena tadira. Okay, same thing, guys. What's more common, making Havdalah or drinking wine? Drinking wine is more toder. Same reason. Vechein hoil or vekan over here hoil vayayin toder Havdalah ena tadira hayayin koder. Great, because Rabbi Yossi is taking as a given that the first reason Beis Shammai is the main reason. The second reason of Beis Hillel is the main reason. And now Rabbi Mana, who holds the opposite, as we'll speak out, this is beautiful. Rabbi Mana holds that the second reason of Beis Shammai is the main reason of Beis Shammai. The first reason of Beis Hillel is the main reason of Beis Hillel. Here it's going to chop the opposite. The opposite. Based on the logic of both, when you have Yain and Havdalah, both will hold that Havdalah comes first. And as you see, and what's common, that the Hey and the Aleph are interchanged. Ad Hayoim, Yerushalmi, that it's Yisrael Dikas, they do that a lot. Especially the Fruma. They take away the Hey and they say the Aleph. Anyways, Havdalah Koidemes, let's talk it out. Klum Tamayim the Beis Shammai Ella, second reason, which is chronological. Which one came first? Shabbos comes before you're making Havdalah. And now over here, Vikan Hoyel v'neschayev b'Havdalah. Achula b'yayin. Here, let's go with the Pnei Moshe's understanding. When are you chayiv to make Havdalah? You're chayiv to make Havdalah right after Shabbos came out. So let's go to him. Same logic. Shabbos came in before you chayiv and yain. What do you do first? Mekadosh Shabbos. Same thing. When are you chayiv to make Havdalah? When Shabbos goes out, before you have the wine. The same chronological. Shabbos comes in first. Havdalah, this man l'chiyuv Havdalah came before you're holding the cup of wine in your hand. So the same logic. Havdalah Keidemes. That fits. Now let's go to Beis Hillel. Klum kamayim the Beis Elo, that yayin goyim l'kedushem shetayamar, he holds that the first reason of Beis Hillel is the main reason, which is cause and effect. What's the cause and effect? Let's go to where we learn. Let's go with one shot. That let's go with the Rabbeinu Tam. It's easier. Then we'll go to the Rashi and the Meiri. There's no option other than wine. Kiddush, only wine. If you don't have wine, you already made Kiddush in the daven. So wine is what's allowing you to make Kiddush. Wine is what allowing you to make. What about Havdalah? There's something called Chamar Medina. Chamar Medina means that let's go with beer. If you don't have, you don't need wine to make Havdalah. The cause of Kiddush is wine. The cause of Havdalah is not wine. The Khan over here, you don't need wine. Why don't you need wine? Why don't you need wine? Because you have a concept of Chamar Medina, as the Pnei Moshe speaks out. So therefore, Havdalah Kodemis. Now I want to go further. Let's go even with the Rashi and the Me'id. Like we mentioned, that bread is considered a stand-in for wine. It's not like you don't have wine, you do bread. Only wine is good. Bread is what is b'makom hayayin. We don't look by Havdalah. We don't look at it that way. You have to make it on yayin. We don't halachically. We don't look at it. No, you can make it with Chamar Medina. And even when we say wine is better than Chamar Medina, which is what we say, the Rebbe was very medagdik and not even on grapefruits to make it on wine. Chamar Medina is okay to be used. Bread is not. Bread is in the place of wine. It's a whole different way of approaching it. That's the way we'll have to learn according to the Rashi and the Meiri. According to the Rabbeinu Tam, it's very clear. Yeah, by Kiddush only wine. If there's no wine, there's no alternative. By Havdalah, there's an alternative. So even Beis Hillel will be Maida Havdalah, and then Yayin. How great is that?
No, but by Havdalah, you can't say you already covered it in the show and Esther. If you say after Antonio, aren't you covered? If you don't have.
So we learned this just a couple of weeks ago. There was a time that you were covered. Now we're not covered, but that's not relevant over here. Point is that if the main reason of Beis Hillel's placement of wine before Kiddush is because wine is needed for Kiddush, cause and effect, you can't say that by Havdalah because wine is not allowing you to make Havdalah. Other things can equally allow you to make Havdalah. Havdalah and then Yain. Okay, now Amar Rab Ze'eda, this is great, right? Now this B'divrei Shneim is copying the words. It's not going B'Shama and Beis Hillel. This is going to Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Mana. They have an argument. What's the main reason? I can tell you, Mavdilin v'loy biyayin v'ein mekachin elo biyayin. Let's take a premise, and what's that premise? That the Charedim says, let's go according to Rav Mana Befeder said. Rav Mana explicitly said it, right? He said that for Kiddush you need wine, parentheses red b'makom yayin, and for Havdalah you don't need. Right? I'm reading inside the Charedim. It was like in middle of the Amid. In middle of the Amid. The ein mekachin klal ela biyayim. B'divrei shneim. B'divrei Rav Mana harei mefurish b'dvarav. Now, what about Rabbi Yossi? So says the Charedim. B'af divrei Rabbi Yossi yesh lilmod. That what? That also that Havdalah doesn't need wine. Why? Because the ihava sfiralei the ein Havdalah ela below yayin. If he would have held that you can only use yayin for Havdalah, then why didn't Rabbi Yossi say that? Lama loy lama the yain kohen Havdalah gami tamirish Beis Hillel, and he didn't say. No, the first reason of Beis Hillel is cause and effect. You can only make Kiddush if you have wine. If he would have held that you can only make Havdalah only if you had wine, Rav Mana wouldn't have leaned on the. I'm sorry, Rabbi Yossi would not have leaned on only one of the two of Beis Hillel. He would have leaned on both of Beis Hillel. Okay, and indeed, that's the halach. He daite that Rab Ze'eda says the Gemara that we hear Rab Ze'eda focusing, extrapolating from this from this beautiful sugya, but he focused on it because we already know that this is his view that Rab Ze'eda Amar Mavdilin ala Sheikhar Havdalah can be made over beer. Another din he said. V'ozlin min asar lasar mishum kedusha. In contrast, the way we learn pshat over here in the Pnei Moshe, which is That if you're Kiddush, in contrast, if you don't have wine, you don't have an option. What
Rabbi,
must you do? Go from one place to another place to find the wine.
Rabbi.
Now, let me one second. I relearned Larashi Ulami'idi that you can make Kiddush on bread. No, look inside the first white line in the Pnei Moshe that you have to go from place to place for Kiddush. You can make it on bread. The Iker mitzvah Kiddush. Even according to those who hold that you can substitute wine with bread, it's only if you have no option. Well, that's what we're saying. Like bread is like it's a stand-in. But if you don't need the stand-in, even if you have to travel, then you have to go to hear a Kiddush. Yes. What?
So what about people who have problems with alcohol? Like if we say it has to be wine.
Grape juice.
I'm just kidding. I don't know.
So grape juice is halakhically the same. It's halakhically like wine. Yes, it is today.
Okay. So that's we have some opinions in halacha, Vlad, who hold that grape juice is wine.
Don't know. I don't see it here.
I know. And I'll tell you more.
That's where they pass it.
It's not something that everyone agrees to. It's something that we rely on. It became common to rely on if you have to. But Alter Rebbe emphasizes many times that if you don't have to rely on that, if you're able to consume the Roiv Revis of Yayin, then that's the way we go. By the way, we do that by Havdalah also. But anyways, in our sugya, it's beautiful. Now, says the Gemara, Mehigan Taman over there, we have a minig over there meaning in Bavo, the Mokem She'en Yayin, where you don't have wine. For what? We're talking about Kiddush. Shliach Tzibur Oivel Lifnei HaTeva. Whoever's leading the davening of Kabbalah Shabbos / Maidev, he'll say after the silent Shmona Esrei Bracha Achas Me'en Sheva, the Choyse Mekadesh Yisrael, Ves Yom HaShabbos. This is such a loaded statement. What are we going to benefit from it? Says the Charedim. Let's read the whole Chared, the last Charedim in the Amid. Haman over there means in Babel. Shehoyim Mokoimes and Babel, there were places that had no wine. Eretz Yisrael is blessed with the grapes and wine, but over there you might not have wine. And that's an option, right? There's an option of you can't fulfill the rabbinic Kiddush, at least to the biblical Kiddush, which is to say the words Mekadosh HaShabbos, which is in the Shemona Esrei. But here you have a problem for people who don't know how to daven. The mitzvahs, Torah, Zachac, Shabbos, Lekatcha, is bidvonim. And Ochta Charedim is writing the words like the Rambam holds that the mitzvah to be Mekadosh Shabbos verbally is both in the beginning and at the end, meaning Havdalah is the Orais. And V'kivan Shekitchu b'dvarim Yotza, biblical. Elama, b'drabanan, Afal Pisha Kitchu b'tfilah. Nevertheless, atzlichuhu lekadoshenis ayayin. Now, V'kivan the Leif V'kam d'Rabbanan. If you don't have wine, if you can't keep the rabbinic, at least keep the biblical. V'kam d'Orais. Fisha tilas Arvis rishus. B'chlal, since Arvis began as a rishus, and therefore there is no repetition of Maidev for the people that are not able to daven it, because it doesn't matter, they're not obligated. Here, Friday night, they are obligated to repeat it. And we repeat it, not the whole thing, but we make a me'ain. And in the me'ain, we have a L'keinu L'keav, we say, no, it ends with what? The Kadesh HaShabbos. Why? Hachach, the Choyve, Kiddush, V'din Toida, V'de'en Lo Yayin. Right. If a guy doesn't have a neighbor, so we just made made a statement. If you don't have wine in your house, go make market l'market. Yeah, you have to have another place to go. What happens if you don't have a neighbor that no one has wine? So because of that scenario, in Higu, they made a minig always. So unlike the reason we have in the Babli, remember that why did they add the whole bracha me'ein zayin? Right, we begin vayechulu. A whole different reason is because there's a danger, because the b'chlal you have the shuls were generally out of the cities, and someone can come late to shul. We don't want them to walk home alone at night, and this will make the whole difference. Adding, it must have been that they used to sing it out. They would take your neshama out. Maybe that repetition took 30 minutes. Even now, people sing, and then they have the from. They have to repeat it. Whatever that is, none of this is written over here. Here, the logic is that since you have to use wine, some people don't have wine. So at least you have the biblical verbalizing Kiddush. Not everyone knows how to daven. So therefore, they made the repetition to repeat the Kiddush. Now, a nuance is that we say Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim by Yom Tiv because because Taka Yom Tov is established based on the day of the month. Who establishes the day of the month? Beis Din. So Mekadesh Yisrael, in order for there to be Kedusha in this month. Who made the 10th of Tishrei holy? Well, you can't just say God, because who made it the 10th of Tishrei? The Jewish people, the Sanhedrin. Shabbos is Mekacha V'Kaim. So therefore, our minhag is that when you make the concluding bracha by Kiddush, you speak about the Kedusha of Shabbos, but you don't speak about the Kedusha of the Jewish people. Here, Mekadesh Yisrael V'Yom HaShabbos. Now, there's no doubt that we add to the Kedusha and Shabbos. I'm thinking that maybe, why do we have over here Mekadesh Yisrael V'Es Yom HaShabbos? Because of what we just learned. That why did they add Me'ein Sheva Li Yerushalmi? Because someone might not have wine. But if someone doesn't have wine, David, at least they're saying Kiddush. So what are we talking about? We're talking about an Amaretz who doesn't know how to say Kiddush. Who's making Kiddush for him? Another Jew. The Kol Yisrael Arevi, the Avos Yisrael, that speaks about the Kiddush of the Yid. That because there is one Jew that does know how to read it, he is helping the other Jew that doesn't know how to read it for him to do the mitzvah. So you're giving an acknowledgement, maybe, Mekadesh Yisrael, good shot. At least, yeah. It's like I'm making a joke and I'm laughing at my own joke. Okay, very good. Shot nachas from myself, that was good. Now, let's go like this. Bekasha al de Bishamai, Beleil Shabbos, Hey Chavidon. Now, let me just give a quick introduction, and this will be the final topic of today. Don't get nervous. The whole Amud Beis is very little, relatively very little. Guys, halka. It's easy, but you have to focus. In our Mishnah, we spoke about Kiddush. Let's go to Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai says, not the way we're used to it. You hold the cup, you say whatever you need to say, you finalize the words Mekadesh Shabbos, then you make the Boyer Pri Hagaf, and then you drink it. Not the way we do it. Beis Shammai. In this Pedic, at the end, we're going to speak about Birchas Hamazon. There's a mitzvah to make Birchas Hamazon over a cup of wine, over a koshel bracha, and then to drink it. Same question. When do you make the bracha for the wine? We know how we do it. By Birchas Hamazon, we bench, then we make the Boyer Pri Hagaf, and then we drink it. That's not Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai holds that the Boyer Pri Hagaf you have to make before you bench. I have to make a little parenthesis, which is, before you bench, why do you have to make a Boyer Pri Hagaf? If you already made it during the meal, then you don't. We're speaking about someone who had no wine during it. They're holding a cup of wine to bench over it. Beis Shammai holds you begin the benching with Boyer Pri Hagaf, then you bench, then you drink. No problem. Problem will be in this Gavaldiki case. Now, the case that the Gemara is speaking about is based on a Braisa, and we're extrapolating from the Braisa. So let me go to the Braisa. The Braisa says that if a person is having a su'uda at the end of Shabbos, and this is something that's common, right? Amar Rabbi Yosi tehei chelki, from people who eat the 3 meals on Shabbos. Here in Chabad Solo, we have more than 3 meals, and we have them all before Chatzos, because you have the meal Friday night, then you have the first meal before the Hasidus class, then you have the other meal. Speaking of people that they had 1 meal Friday night, then they have a meal Shabbos day, and then before the end of the Shabbos, that's when they're going to have the 3rd meal. There's nothing wrong as long as you washed before Shkia for you to eat as long as you want to eat. Even though you can't eat before Havdalah, you're still in Shabbos. But then when you bench, now you can only eat after you make Havdalah. So what's going to happen if a person only has 1 cup of wine? They have to use it for Havdalah, and they have to use it for benching. So the Braisa says you can use the same cup of wine. We're going to get to what you say first in a moment. We're going to end with that, and then we'll pick up from that tomorrow. What's the concept that you can use 1 cup of wine, both for Birchas Hamazon and for Havdalah, is something that we do nowadays. Whoever is going to bench Koshel Bracha, when they finish Shalosh Shudas, in every place, what will you see? They're holding a cup of wine. When they finish benching, because it's after benching, they don't drink it. They put it on the table, you cover it, you daven ma'ariv, and you use the same cup of wine. That's not exactly the way they did it. We're speaking about people that would drink it right afterwards, but they're going to say the words of Havdalah in some place. We're going to figure out soon where. But before we get into the Seder of Birchas Hamazon, Havdalah, and Yayin, the given is, if that's the case, let's flip it. You're eating a meal out of Shabbos. Now, should you be eating a meal out of Shabbos? Let's not get into that. Really, after a certain time, no, you should not. But you did. Another challenge. When a person is having a meal out of Shabbos going into Shabbos, The only time that we do this nowadays, if you remember, put him. And so then we applied the rule of Paitis Mapel Mekadosh, which would mean you don't bench, you're in the middle of a meal. Stop the meal, cover the challah, make kiddush, and keep on having your su'ud. That works because we're going with the premise that it's a mitzvah to bench over a cup of wine. You're going to make one kiddush in the middle of the meal when Shabbos came in. And then when you'll bench, you'll have more wine for Birchas HaMazon. That's ideal. What happens if you only have one cup of wine? Everything I'm saying now is the given. The given will be is that you don't do Paitis Mapel Mekadosh. Shabbos came in, it's okay. You began the meal before Shabbos. Just like Motzei Shabbos, when you begin the meal Shabbos afternoon, now that it's dark, you don't have to stop. You can't eat before Havdalah, you're in the middle of the meal. You began a meal out of Shabbos when you don't have an option because you only have one cup of wine. We're not going to debate that. You keep on eating. And by benching, you're going to use this benching and Kiddush will be together. This is what we're talking about right now. And we're going to show you how Beis Shammai will get trapped. Let's go with the Zimun. And by the way, we bench by ourselves. We don't have a cup of wine. We hold a cup of wine as long as we have even 3 people. Let's not get into this right now. So now, question is, guys, how come? Which bracha comes first? Let me speak out the trap over here. When it comes to the Kiddush part, what does Beis Shammai say in our Mishnah? What comes first?
Cause.
Shabbos
And
wine. When it comes to benching, what comes first? Beis Shammai holds benching and then wine. Wine and then benching. Wine and then benching. Here we're putting it all together. We're going to see that each one contradicts the other. Let's read it inside. Shabbos and v'chashka leile Shabbos and the Ein Sham Elo Oisa HaKois, as we spoke out, and therefore you don't have to do the Paitis Mapa. Here will be the exceptional case. You began the meal before Shabbos, eat until bench. At Amar, you say, that's what we will have to say, drink the cup until after the meal. After the meal means for Birchas HaMazon and Umeshalshel Kulam Olav, meaning you're gonna chain, you're gonna link everything. Everything means both Kiddush and Havdalah, or both Kiddush and Birchas HaMazon. Kiddush or Birchas HaMazon and then Kiddush. We'll see which one comes first. And obviously they'll have to be about a Priya Gofen, turning to the Af, Ein Chesam at Beis. Now I got a Miman of Shach. Now I'm trapped. I don't know what to do. So let's go. There are 3 brachas here, right? So let's go all the options. And I'll show you that none of the options will work. If you're first going to make Yivarach Ala Yoim, first you're going to make Kiddush, doesn't make sense. Why not? Because Hamazon Kodem. Why Hamazon Kodem? Because what was the reason of Beis Shammai? The reason of Beis Shammai was, let's go to the second reason of Beis Shammai. Why does Beis Shammai say Shabbos and then wine? Because what came first chronologically? First Shabbos comes in. Shabbos comes in after Lichbenshim. When are you making Kiddush? An hour later. So let's go over here. What obligation came in? This guy began the meal before Shabbos. So the first obligation is benching. So based on that logic, Beis Shammai, what should come first? Benching. Let's go to benching. When you go to benching, what does Beis Shammai say? What's the seder of benching? Wine, and then benching. You see how you're trapped? If benching is before Kiddush and wine is before benching, so wine versus Kiddush, where will it be? Wine is going to be before, but Beis Shammai holds that wine has to be after Kiddush. Because the reason why you came late, the reason why Beis Shammai says Kiddush comes before the Yain is because the second reason of Beis Shammai is because the Chiyuv of Shabbos came in before the Chiyuv of wine. Came in before you're holding the wine. But you're having a meal, you began the meal out of Shabbos. So the Chiyuv of Birchas HaMazon came before Shabbos. The logic of Beis Shammai applied over here should mean that Hamazon Koyd. Once you have to make a benching first. So according to Beis Shammai, not Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai holds by benching wine and then benching. Hayayin Koyd. How can you begin the whole thing by making Yevarach Ala Yayin? You can't do that. Why not? Because what does Beis Shammai say in our Mishnah? You're going to have to make Kiddush and wine. What comes first? Hayoim Koydem. You're trapped. You're stuck. What do? I think just drink the cup of wine and run away. I don't know. No, the chiv of benching hamazon comes the moment you had a kazayis or even midaraita. The moment you're chayiv. You're not chayiv to do it now, but there's a chiyuv. Yeah, it's great. So answers the Gemara. That I'll tell you. Nashmeina and I have a solution to that problem. What's the solution? Go. You're quoting me. Really, this discussion of yayin birchas hamazon or birchas hamazon and yayin is in the last Mishnah of this chapter. Go. He's quoting the words of that Mishnah. The Mishnah says bol lehem yayin achar hamazon. Achar hamazon, like we had 2 prakim ago, right? Achar doesn't mean after you benched. It means after you ate. After you ate. In other words, you didn't have wine yet, you'll have to make a bracha on the wine. We're just quoting the words. So that's where Beis Shammai says, yeah, what's the seder? Says Beis Shammai, first yayin, and then birchas hamazon. So Amar Rabbi Bon says Rabbi Bon is giving a logic to that. Al yedei shu bracha kitano. Since B'nai Pri Hagafen is a very short bracha, benching is a whole benching. So Beis Shammai was afraid that if you're going to leave the B'nai Pri Hagafen to the end, you're holding a cup of wine for a long time. You're looking at that wine. After the whole benching, you might forget and not make the B'nai Pri Hagafen. No, he was of the psychological reason. Since the bracha of yayin is very quick, and it's in your hand the whole time. So if a little quick is good, you're benching and benching and benching and benching, you feel like you already fulfilled your obligation to talk to God. That is only because if all you need to do is to make the B'nai Pri Hagafen, which is a bracha ketana, he was afraid that after talking to God for a long time, you'll forget the bracha ketana. Masha'enkin, in our unusual case, where you only have 1 cup of wine, unusual that you began a meal out of Shabbos, and you went into Shabbos, and you're not even doing Peiros Mapa because you only have 1. Unusual. In that case, you know that after benching, you also have to make kiddush. You know not to make benching into drink. There's a lot that you need to do. So, and again, Shalish Brach Ketana says Rabbi Ba, which is Rabbi Abba, Shema Yishkach ve'ishtem, which is why he says, okay, make the yayin before. Get that out of the way. But Bram, in our unusual case, since you also have to make kiddush, therefore, even the Shammai will be moida that what that einoi shoicheyach. How great is that? And therefore, what do we say? What will be to say there? Say, and therefore, let's read inside the Pnei Moshe 10 line, the Charedim. I'm sorry, 10 lines from the top. That I'm going Shema Yishkach, right? Shema Yishkach v'yishtav loy brach. Shmuel hema yain achar hamazon ken birchas hamazon. Imach to'emi yivarach birchas hamazon tchila v'akois b'yad Shema Yishkach v'yishtav. The way that we chapa, it's already in your hand. When you finish hamazon, b'yad you're going to swallow it. Aval kishu yoideya. When you know that what? You know there's still stuff you need to do. The Kiddush and Kiddush and B'nai Pri Hagafen, which means, right, that's Shitas Beis Shammai. Kiddush and B'nai Pri Hagafen. Ooh, that's already a long bracha. That you're not going to make a bracha yain kodim birchas hamazon. So therefore, what will be the Seder Beis Shammai, guys? What do you do? Now will be moide like us. He's going to make birchas hamazon, right? That would be a pity if you can take that off. I know we asked you many times; it's not working. I don't know why. So that's the shita. So you're going to make birchas hamazon and kiddush, right? Let's go to Beis Shammai and kiddush and yayin. Birchas hamazon.
Shita. It's just that birchas hamazon comes first.
Exactly. And it doesn't bother me that I'm not making yayin before birchas hamazon. Okay. And therefore, Kate said, Yaseh. Oh, the Gemara says, so what should you do? Or Yasu, or Yaseh. I'll give it Beis Shammai. Yivarech al hamazon tchila. And then L'shitas Beis Shammai. Then you make hayoy meaning kiddush. And then you make yayin. I wish I went further, but we didn't go further. Doesn't matter. The Gemara is going to point out that this type of question you're going to have now on Beis Hillel L'shitasei the same way as we'll get to. We'll stop here. It's already 7 o'clock, and Rabbi Blan was already late anyway, so we're going that. All right.
Thank you, Rabbi.